So joining us now to wrap up the busy week in politics is WGN political analyst and host of the Political Report, Paul Lisnek. Let's start with Merrick Garland and Donald Trump. Just a little while ago, Donald Trump actually got on the podium and gave his reaction to what's going on, calling it appalling and horrendous abuse of power, and said that Jack Smith as a special counsel is a super radical left special counsel.
Well, I saw part of that speech. He was at a white tie event at Mar-a-Lago. Jack Smith is registered as an independent. He has been involved in crimes in The Hague, terrorist kinds of crimes.
That's where he is now, in the Netherlands.
Exactly. Yeah. So no, that's not a fair representation of who Jack Smith is. The truth is, a lot of people don't know much about him, but he is pretty definitely experienced in the world of criminal prosecutions. This is what he does, and Merrick Garland brought him in to create this sense of independence.
But could this slow it down? Because it's already been pretty slow. Doesn't he have to review everything and go over everything?
That's a concern, Micah, but probably not by much, because yes, he has to review things, but what's been done is done. So again, what Merrick Garland chose to do, and the indication here would be, things could be leaning towards an indictment, because why would you bring a special prosecutor in if you weren't thinking of going in that direction? But we should say, just to clarify what the lead-in to me said, which was that Smith will make an ultimate recommendation, kind of a final recommendation to Garland. Garland does have to sign off on it, but the law requires Garland to give great deference to what Smith ultimately recommends.
Let's talk about the congressional balance of power. Democrats hang on to the Senate, the Republicans getting the House here. What do you think will happen agenda-wise going forward that doesn't involve some sort of investigation?
Well, and great point, Ray, because Kevin McCarthy has told us what their agenda is, and it is a lot of investigations. Now, in fairness to McCarthy and the Republicans, there's not a lot of legislative action that they could get done, because the Democrats will control the Senate, and there's very little that they're going to do if it's within their world of cutting down on prescription drugs that they wanted to do and some other things that the Senate is going to pass. So it kind of goes nowhere. So that's why they'll focus a lot on these investigations. There's some questions. We know they're going after Hunter Biden. And the issue I have about Hunter Biden is, if the guy has done wrong stuff, bad stuff, then the DOJ should prosecute him. But I don't know why it's a congressional matter. Where is the congressional issue?
And what's the connection to the president?
Exactly. But by the way, Democrats who have the Senate, not the House, if you were to ask Democrats, well, you only get one, which one do you want? They would take the Senate, because that's where the president gets his judicial nominations passed, any cabinet nomination openings that's passed, so it's critical for the president.
A history being made this week with Nancy Pelosi stepping down from leadership, the first female House Speaker. And we know that Hakeem Jeffries is probably the front runner to replace her. He's a pretty sharp guy, and he'd be the first black.
And look, he's pretty much handpicked. So I'd almost go out on a short limb and just go, he's going to be it. He's going to be the minority leader for the House. And then there's a woman in second position. There's
Catherine Clark.
And
Pete Aguilar.
And Pete Aguilar, Latino. So this is an effort of the Democrats to, in their party, have diversity, bring diversity in every way, in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicity. And it's a new generation, which Nancy Pelosi promised 4 years ago she would do 2 terms and then step down. So she's keeping her promise, reasons aside. It's not a surprise that she's not leaving Congress, because they're going to need her for a while for advice and background information and all of that.
All right, the announcement at Mar-a-Lago. President Trump, as expected, the former president said he is getting back in now for a third time. What do you think the likelihood is that Ron DeSantis would really give him a challenge? What do you see with that taking shape?
First of all, the president's announcement this past week, which I watched, is the reason you heard the special counsel announcement today. That's what pushed Garland. Just to make that point, it triggered that. What Ron DeSantis is going to do, I said, look, this is early. Trump has come in pretty early in this whole process. So I think DeSantis, Larry Hogan, governor, there's lots of different people who I think may play and flirt with this idea. It's actually to Trump's benefit if he has 10 people on the stage with him, because that's when he does well. It'd almost be a tougher race if he has only one person like DeSantis next to him. I do want to make one point, if I can. A lot of people think the reason President Trump announced, I'm one of them, is because he knew these indictments could be coming. And the thought would be that by announcing, he not only slows it down, but maybe he gives them pause to not even proceed. But I think there's a new step that no one's been talking about. So let's break this one here, which is, I think what President Trump will ultimately do is, if he's indicted, is file motions to stay proceedings everywhere there's a primary, which is everywhere, because his argument is going to be, this shouldn't happen till the primaries are over, because it's not fair to a presidential candidate. And there may very well be a Trump-appointed judge in the country who, when presented with that question, says, yeah, that's unfair to the president. It's different from every other candidate for presidency. So it's a weak legal argument, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's what he does. And then, of course, things get tied up in the judicial system.
President Biden still having problems with his student loan relief.
Yeah.
Now going to the Supreme Court.
He's had 2 different federal judges stop the payments on 2 different reasons, but they all ultimately say it's unconstitutional. And President Biden was accused of getting this plan through because he wanted the youth vote in the elections. But he's not dropping things. He did, as you said, Micah, he went to the Supreme Court today and he asked the Supreme Court to put a stay on those holds so that he could begin the payments. The truth is, I think he's on a weak leg with the Supreme Court for 2 reasons. Number one, it's a conservative court that hasn't been very good. They were pretty good to Trump in terms of expanding presidential power. They've not been so great to Biden in expanding presidential power. And on this particular issue, to allow the payments to go out, if they ultimately decide no, that this wasn't constitutional, how do you get that? How do you get those credits back? Doesn't look good. So I think we don't be able to.
In the final minute here, let's talk about Chicago politics. Kind of a surprise. Former Governor Pat Quinn choosing not to run for Chicago
he was with
mayor.
us on election night, and I think most people expected him to say he was going to run. So he said he's talked to all the other candidates. He wants this sort of tax advocate position. He's always into his signing the papers and the petitions and stuff. So I don't know. There might be somebody who says, yes, I will fight for what you want, but I don't think Pat Quinn goes away. It was a bit of a surprise to find out that he's not running.
What's coming up on your show?
Well, I'm going to talk to Speaker Chris Welch, House Speaker Chris Welch, this weekend. We're going to talk about what the veto session will look like now that the Democrats did so well and why they did so well. And then we're going to also have Ken Mejia Beal, who is the first LGBTQ and African-American elected in DuPage County on the boards out there. And so he's going to talk about how DuPage has been what now many Democratic politicians are calling Blue Page County.
All right, Paul, thank you. So catch Paul
Thank you, guys.
every Sunday morning here on WGN on the Political Report starting at 9 a.m. right after the WGN Weekend Morning News.
I know you do, Ray.
Okay.